There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with David Kelly, General Manager of KingSumo. David, how's it going today, man?
Oh, it's going awesome, Logan. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Really excited to get going.
Hey, I'm excited to finish up my week with a great chat with you here. You know, this episode will go live later, but we're both enjoying a sunny Friday afternoon right now. So looking forward to a great conversation on a Friday. Before we jump into some guerrilla marketing tactics that really, really work and some really fun stories, I would love for you to take a second, David, and just let the folks listening to this know what you and the team at KingSumo are up to these days.
Absolutely. So my role is the general manager of KingSumo, which is part of Sumo Group. If your listeners have heard of at&nbsp or sumo.com, it's the third aspect of that Sumo Group. And our entire goal is to really make it easier and inexpensive for B2B businesses to grow their following. So we notice that Facebook ads, SEO, outreach can be expensive and time consuming. And our purpose with KingSumo is to make it much, much cheaper to do marketing activities that really work.
Awesome. Well, that's an aim, I think, that can resonate with a ton of our listeners, David. So like I said, I'm really excited about this conversation. So we have a few specific tactics you guys have employed and some cool stories to jump into. So let's dive right in. This first one that you mentioned as we were chatting offline was something you guys did in a viral giveaway.
Yes. So viral giveaways, people hear this and they think they have to give away like a trip to Bali or something crazy, or it's one of those scammy giveaways they see online. And both of those things can be true, but they aren't necessarily true. So to give an example, in the early days of growing appsumo.com, which is now an 8-figure company, about 30% of revenue came from viral giveaways. And we actually like doing viral giveaways so much, we built this internal tool that we dubbed KingSumo, and then released it to the world. And what we noticed with giveaways is that we're able to drive leads, drive customers, drive a lot of success for basically no money. And we have a few examples of people using it, like best-selling authors Ryan Holiday, Shane Snow, some other big companies like Outsite.co, which some of you remote workers might have heard of. And we've seen people drive leads for about 5 cents a lead versus much more expensive Facebook or SEO type advertising or work.
Definitely more than 5 cents a lead.
That's right. And what's fascinating too is that people often think giveaways lead to bad subscribers or bad customers or just like annoying, scammy people. Right. And that isn't necessarily true. We've noticed that the quality tends to be pretty high. And there are always people who kind of sneak in and they're just like the freebie moms, we call them, who just sit at home all day and try to win giveaways. But even if we say 20 to 30% or at maximum 50% of leads aren't as great as they could be, you're still looking at 10 to maybe 20 cents per lead, which is still much, much cheaper than other marketing channels.
Right, for sure. So what are some of the ideas that you guys recommend for B2B marketers trying to start out with viral giveaways?
So for B2B marketing specifically, it's really focusing on finding a really specific targeted product towards your audience, right? So an example we can give is we had this woman named Marie who is a fitness guru, essentially. And she gave away a few fitness products within her product suite. So her own personal product suite, which cost her no money. And then she also got a couple partners to give her free products to give away. So in the B2B space, we've seen people do partner giveaways, let's say, with some other tools in the marketing space or some other tools in the sales space or CRM space or whatever it is. And they're not only able to drive those B2B leads for real cheap, they're also able to leverage their partners for more audience growth and to show the giveaway to more audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very interesting, man. Well, going off of that, so talking about, getting these leads for much, much lower than, your cost per lead, say with a Facebook ad, there was another story that you guys had in using a content blocker in a Facebook ad strategy. Tell us a little bit more about that story.
Yeah. So I guess the crux of this conversation is like, we're just really cheap. We just like doing things really inexpensively. So trying to find those guerrilla growth marketing tactics that work for a growing startup where we don't want to spend tons and tons of money and don't have a very large team and like to remain nimble. We're just hacking together things and trying different things. And I think this is one your audience will really like. I'm curious to hear what people think about this after the show. And this is called a content blocker. And we actually have a tool. If you want to email me at david@kingsumo.com after this conversation, I'll give you this free WordPress plugin. And basically what it does is you can install this WordPress plugin or just this line of code, and it kind of disallows someone from reading the entire article until they give their email address. So some people might have seen this on Tim Ferriss's blog in the past year or so. I think we're part of the inspiration for him to do that. And what this content blocker does is we used it to drive Facebook ad traffic to a blog post on our site and then collect email addresses from the blog post. And we were able to get down our lead cost to about $1 per lead. And it's not bad for Facebook ads. It's not as cheap as giveaways, but we were able to get some quality leads for relatively low cost, which was a really fun way to hack it together. And it was just a free WordPress plugin we just kind of built behind the scenes. So cool thing to do.
Yeah. So walk me through, the thinking behind the content blocker versus, a pop-up or something else to then, collect that email address, or just entirely gating the content. Any thoughts on why that was more effective?
Yeah, it's a combination of actually gating and pop-ups, which I think it pulls the best inspiration from both. So the thing we noticed with pop-ups, and our sister company, Sumo.com, is all about pop-ups and generating forms and lead gen forms to make it easier. And pop-ups work really well for the most part, but we do notice that it isn't necessarily as contextual, and it can be kind of annoying if you're reading a piece of content and this thing just pops up, right? And you can also just X out of it very easily and quickly, and there are no repercussions, and it's really easy to bypass. Now, with an entire gate, it gets kind of annoying because you can't even see a preview of the content like a lot of these newspapers are doing now. So you can't see if this content is interesting to you. So the content blocker we created allows you to set like the percentage scroll depth before the content blocker shows. So for example, we would set it to 20 to 30%. So someone could read part of the article, they could understand and decide if it was right for them. And then if it was right for them, they could give their email address to read the rest of it. And if that piece of content was interesting, we're in many ways helping them see more pieces of content by emailing them in the future that are similar.
Right. So you're gating the content, but not really on the front end. And that really, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know if I'm just a typical millennial, but I actually have a journalism background, but the news sites that totally went to, a subscription wall really, really far on the very front end, lost me a long time ago, even with my journalism background and my, passion for, seeing good journalism, get paid without knowing what I was going to get, it becomes a little bit tough. So I think the psychology of that is kind of interesting, in just that you're providing a little bit more before you ask for something. You're still doing that, but you're getting a little bit later. Very interesting, man. this third topic that you guys have seen in just inexpensive ways to get organic reach, get more leads, or get low cost leads is something near and dear to my heart because, the team here, we've been talking about LinkedIn for a while. We've really doubled down on LinkedIn the last 6 to 12 months ourselves. So tell us a little bit about some of the tactics that you think, some of our audience might be missing on getting more reach on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is a really, really interesting one. And I think the crux of giveaways and the content blocker and LinkedIn is that with marketing, there's a really fine line between being annoying and aggressive and just doing kind of immoral things and making sure to drive traffic and results while still kind of benefiting the user. Mm-hmm. And we notice that with giveaways where we're trying to give away quality products, we're trying to help people grow their business to add actual value to their customers. So no bait and switch. And then the content blocker, very similar with showcasing some of the content. And only if people like it, they're able to add the content blocker to the site to get those email subscribers. And LinkedIn is very similar. So we notice with LinkedIn, this is under our CEO's account. So we post under a personal account. We get about 3 to 10 times the number of clicks versus Twitter, despite having half the amount of followers. So we have about 61,000 followers to our CEO's personal Twitter account. We have about 30,000 followers / connections to his LinkedIn account. And despite that, on LinkedIn, we still average about 161 clicks per post. And we've seen multiple posts in the 700, 800 click range, including one crazy post that got about 1,800 clicks, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Tell us a little bit more about some of the formula that you guys have seen worked on LinkedIn, because as we were chatting offline, David, you mentioned a couple of things that you guys have tested and have tracked over time. So I think some of those tactical takeaways would be awesome for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done a pretty deep data and correlation analysis for our LinkedIn posts. And over the past year, we've done about 100 LinkedIn posts. And we had some really interesting findings. So I'm going to share these with all the listeners. Really curious how they work for your listeners. And it's important to keep in mind that this is just kind of a framework. So we're constantly testing, we're constantly iterating. So this might be a good place to start, but inevitably there are improvements that can be made. So the first thing we noticed is the first 2 lines that people see are the most important. And this might sound kind of obvious, but on LinkedIn status updates, people need to remember that the first 2 lines are the lines that are shown and the rest of the status update is hidden unless someone clicks view more. So you really, really, really have to hook them with those first 2 lines and get them to click view more, because that's kind of the cascading effect of getting people to then click, engage, interact, comment with your post. So that was the first thing.
Yeah. And going back to my journalism background, as they say, don't bury the lead, don't put the most engaging point at the very end, lead with it. Then you might have to back up and tell some more story. But if you write that post, think about what is the key piece here, or how could I phrase it to really make it interesting? I mean, if it's super clickbaity and people just, associate your posts with not good content, then it's never going to work in the long term. But I see a lot of people that are sharing good content, but they're not thinking about that first line or 2.
Totally agree. And then as an extension of that, and I think you bring up a really good point with making sure not only the first 2 lines are really sticky, but making sure that you really earn the lead throughout the entire message. We noticed that the median of our most successful post had about 688 characters, and only 3 of our top 10 posts had greater than 1,000 characters. So for us, that shows that typically shorter posts, really to the point posts, worked very well. And you talk about being a millennial. I'm a millennial too. And I think we can both relate to just not wanting to always necessarily read really long posts or really long, like tell-all novels on social media.
Right.
So we try to keep it short.
And millennial or not, we're all busy, man. We all,
Exactly.
we want to get the most bang for our buck in the time that we spend consuming the content, right?
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on images and links in those status updates? Because we found some specific things there that tie to metrics. Curious to see if you guys have talked about or seen any correlations there.
Okay. I'm curious to hear what you guys have seen. So for us, we noticed that links are okay. And we even tried some things like posting the link or editing the link an hour after the post went live, 2 hours after the post went live, 3 hours after the post went live. For our experience, and this might differ from yours, for our experience, links, they work fine. There's no increase or decrease if we remove the link or add in the link later. It just doesn't seem to matter. Images, on the other hand, seem to really lower the overall views and lower the overall clicks. How did you guys do with your images and your links?
I've seen three things we've encouraged people to, do the LinkedIn hack, if you will, of putting the link in the first comment, because we do tend to see that extends the reach. I can't say that we've tracked it metric over metric, time after time, but I know personally I started doing this combined with some other things, and I literally 100x'd my LinkedIn views.
Wow.
There's a number of things I did besides that. Some of the stuff that you're talking about, we definitely included, but I definitely see that, we've seen that too. Totally agree with you, David, on the images and even videos. For as much as LinkedIn video is hot right now, I can do a post that's text only. If I do one that it includes a video, even if it gets similar engagement, same number of likes and comments in the first day, the views don't quite seem to get there as they do the text only posts.
Totally agree. That's what we noticed. And you bring up a really interesting point too, because in our correlation analysis we noticed that likes most highly correlate to views, and then views most highly correlate to clicks. So it really does start with getting those likes, and then the views kind of cascade from there into clicks. But yeah, we noticed the same thing with images and video, which is fascinating for us.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too is that at least from what we've seen, LinkedIn's algorithm really does look at the amount of engagement that it gets, not only just over the life of the post, but within the first hour or two. To us, it seems like those number of likes and comments are really crucial in the first hour or two that an update goes live. And so one thing we've encouraged people to do that we work with and just chatting about LinkedIn and stuff is, if you do post and you get a lot of likes and comments in that first hour or two, engage with each one of those, because that's going to, encourage more likes. So if someone comments, you comment back. Normally they might not comment again unless you're really getting into a good conversation, but they'll probably like that comment that you left in reply to their comment. And so that engagement can kind of snowball. And I think, especially if you pair that with engagement groups and some of these other tactics that you've been sharing, people really can exponentially increase their LinkedIn visibility pretty quickly. It's got to be, it's got to be good content, but once you layer these on top of decent content, you will definitely see some results. So really interesting to hear that you guys are seeing a lot of the same things. Specifically, I wanted to round out the conversation with a quick story you guys had on a LinkedIn post on cryptocurrency. Yeah.
So we have a great story about this. So we have our CEO and our founder of Sumo Group claims himself as the world's worst investor. And it's pretty funny because we recorded this video all about cryptocurrency and how he had just put a couple $1,000s in cryptocurrency. And he was talking about where he thought the crypto market would go. And the crux of his conversation was, people are just overreacting. No one really knows what's going to happen. It's just kind of a fun thing to do. Just do it if you want to, but don't do it if you're trying to get rich or you don't know what you're doing. And about 2 days after he posted this video and we posted a LinkedIn post about this, the crypto market crashed. So the joke is that, in fact, the CEO and founder of my company is probably the world's worst investor, and it plummeted shortly after that. But this post, we had a really strong intro, really strong first two lines. At the very bottom of the post, we linked to the crypto video, and it got 1,800 clicks which is just an insane amount of clicks. And when we think about where those clicks went to, it went to our YouTube channel, which is one of the most important marketing channels for us in the B2C and B2B spaces. Mm-hmm. So not only is it just like kind of a fun, funny story, but it really drives results. And I think it's a great lesson for B2B marketers to keep in mind that it's fun to post these and it can also be beneficial to the company.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I love that story. I think, David, you had a ton of really tactical stuff for our audience to take away from this. If folks want to stay connected with you, follow what you and the team at KingSumo and the Sumo Group are up to, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
For sure. So thanks again for having me, Logan. And if people want to contact me, just david@kingsumo.com. Feel free to ask me for the content blocker. I'll send it along your way, or just ask about tacos. I'm happy to talk about that anytime. You can also check out our site at kingsumo.com. And then if you want to see just really short blog posts that I post like once every 4 years when I feel like it, you can check out my personal blog at dmkthinks.org.
I love it. I love it, David. This has been a phenomenal conversation, man. Before we let the audience go today, we're going to give a quick shout out, as we've been doing for the last week or so, to the Flip My Funnel conference coming up in just a few weeks as of the recording of this episode. August 8th in Boston is going to be the Flip My Funnel conference. It is going to be a great event. I've seen the speaker lineup. We've been talking to a lot of the speakers and folks that are going to be there. A lot of B2B marketers and a lot of great stuff on account-based marketing is going to be happening then. And we've got a promo code for you guys. That is B2B Growth, B, the number 2, B Growth, just like our show name. If you go to flipmyfunnel.com, click the 2018 conference link. When you go to buy your tickets, use that promo code B2B Growth and you'll get 50% off the price of admission. And we look forward to seeing a lot of our listeners, past guests, and a lot of industry experts in the B2B marketing space in Boston in a few weeks.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B Growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B Growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.